We're just ordinary people living ordinary lives until we see someone on TV win a $25,000 prize. Come on down. I'll play any game for 10 seconds of fame. Come on down. I'll make a deal, just let me spin the wheel. Come on down. To win $1 million, all you need is a little luck and thorough knowledge of multiple disparate trivial subjects.
All right, welcome to another episode of Come On Down. Whoa, look at that. The game show podcast.
Rated #1 in the world by our mommies.
Does your mom listen to it? I don't think
No, she gave it a #2.
Okay.
But if your mom gave it a 1, that's a 1.5?
And we round that up to a 2.
Yeah, we...
Oh,
shoot. Wait a minute. That didn't work.
All right. So today's episode, we are going to be talking about a program called Takeshi's Castle. Takeshi's Castle.
It sounds like a video game. Like that would be I guess when you say Takeshi, I think of Tekken.
Yeah, well, it's not a video game. It's a game show.
It kind of plays like a video game.
In Japan. All right, so before we do that, we've got a sponsor. Just came in last minute.
Another sponsor.
Yeah, I know. I haven't even told you about this yet, but printed this up, and so I'll give it to you right now. Mm-hmm. So you haven't seen this. And
I have not.
And you're going to go ahead and start with the sponsor read, yeah?
Okay. Today's episode of Come On Down is brought to you by Mediocre Bit Creator.
That sounds interesting. What's that?
Well, let me give you an example. You know when you're watching the local news and they send a reporter to some 5K where people are all dressed up in banana suits, and it's definitely not actual news, but it allows them to make jokes about splits and say how going for a run has never been more appealing. That's some of the classic work of Mediocre Bit Creator.
Oh, wow. I love that kind of zany and unpredictable content. But I'm not a producer on the local news. How is this product for me?
Well, we know we've got a diverse group of listeners, so this isn't just for local news producers. It's also for national news producers and etc.
Oh, but just news producers, though.
Of course not. Let's imagine you have a podcast, and you're just doing anything you can try to fill up an hour's worth of runtime, but you just don't have that many interesting things to say. Mm-hmm. Instead of being successful and creating relationships with actual sponsors, Mediocre Bit Creator will write scripts for fake sponsors that you can record and run on your show.
Oh, wow. Will they be funny?
Rarely. But it will allow you to do the too cool for school sort of thing, where you can show your listening audience that you don't care that you haven't developed that big a following yet, and you don't need the validation of actual companies that will pay you to advertise their product. You're just having fun.
That's kind of depressing.
Very depressing. But if you use the referral code COMEONDOWN at checkout, you can depress those prices. Get 15% off your first Mediocre Bit with Mediocre Bit Creator now.
Wow, might have to look into these guys.
Poignant, very specific thing.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like it.
Honestly, what's sadder though? Not having real sponsors, or not being creative to write a fake sponsor and just making fun of not having sponsors. Which one do you think in your opinion?
Probably the first one, the not having sponsors thing. That's sad. I mean, like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your time? This is the 14th episode of a podcast you've made? You're pathetic. Nobody listens to it.
I mean,
just in general terms.
I listen to it. I watch the entire hour. Here's what I do. I don't listen to it. I go to the parts where I made you laugh, and I didn't laugh that hard. So it was like, oh, I crushed that joke. And I just watch that on repeat.
That sounds about right. All right. So thank you to Mediocre Bit Creator for sponsoring today's episode. Today's episode, by the way, we mentioned is about a program in Japan called Takeshi's Castle.
Mm-hmm.
Many Americans have seen this show in some form or fashion under the name MXC.
Mm-hmm. Much less of a ring to it than Takeshi's Castle.
But we're going to start at the beginning, of course.
Of time?
Yes. First, God created what did
Adam.
He do first?
Oh, no, probably the universe. Oh,
wasn't it like 7 days?
Yeah, it was definitely 7 days. The first day was like, I don't know, DJs or something.
The first thing is just kind of fucking around learning the controls. There was a tutorial.
You just kept doing the one thing you could do over and over.
Yeah.
He just made a shit ton of water. He's like,
yeah,
I'm
water,
good. That's good
water.
for today, right?
Oh, God, I made way too much of the thing water. It's like 2/3 water right now. I think it's way too much water.
Oh, my God. I made the people, and I accidentally had the water code on. They're like 70% water. What do we do?
So Takeshi's Castle started in 1986 in Japan.
Which is relevant to us.
Because we started in 1986.
We also started in 1986, yes.
In Japan?
Well, maybe. I don't know. I think my parents might have traveled there once.
All right. So it ran from 1986 to 1990 on TBS.
Too funny. Oh, wait. Here's the characters.
No, it is something with characters.
Yeah.
Characters welcome.
Bad. Mine's better.
That's what theirs is. I'm just saying. But no, the Tokyo Broadcasting System.
Oh, okay. Characters welcome.
Was that a racist impression?
No, I thought about doing it at the first, and I didn't want to do it, so I
appreciate your restraint. So it was hosted featuring a comedian named Takeshi Kitano. So in the show, he basically played a character named Count Takeshi.
Mm-hmm. And he threw cereal at people?
Yes. No, he would just pop up and go, "How many contestants left? 1, 2.
Didn't this show have like 100 contestants
3.
on it?
Yeah. Most of the show was counting the contestants.
Contestants.
So he played a character named Count Takeshi who owned a castle. And the game would have somewhere between 86 and 142 contestants each episode.
Just depending on how many people said they could do it.
Yeah, like some people like, oh, I've got dinner plans.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't make it.
I don't want to go headfirst into a wall today.
Right. So between 86 and 142. And because a lot of the episodes were maybe themed or something, it would be like couples competing together or children, etc.
There was
a children's episode, yeah.
Okay, just one though, probably, right?
Hopefully.
Oh my God.
But I definitely saw a children's episode. But so basically the way the show worked was there's a whole bunch of people.
A lot.
Then there were a bunch of goofy, ridiculous physical challenges, more or less.
Like mud run stuff.
Yes. And each phase, if you didn't complete it, you were eliminated. And so more and more people got eliminated each time. And at the end, there were only a few people left, and they stormed the castle. And in the beginning, they did that with, and there were several events like this. They would have like a little buggy, a little car, where they would have water guns. And at the front of the car was a paper circle.
Okay.
And then there was Count Takeshi with his car with a paper circle. And he had guards, basically, called the Emerald Guard or Takeshi Gundam. And so these guys, there would be a few cars of the Emerald Guard also in the mix with their water guns driving around as well. And so the goal was to shoot your water gun through the paper ring on Count Takeshi's vehicle so that it got a hole in it.
The paper ring reminded me of... Do you remember that board game that it was like a thin ice or on thin ice?
Yes.
That's what it looked like, was a something that's
tissue
a pound
thing,
dropped from 2 inches above it could easily
Yeah, and you had to put
it.
marbles on it in that game. Yeah. So yeah, it was paper and you had to shoot it with water so that it would get a hole in it. And if you did that, everybody who was remaining at that point, who hadn't gotten their hole shot out, split 1,000,000 yen.
Which is what, $40?
It's like $8,000
Okay.
at the time. But this is the 80s. $8,000 is not a bad prize for winning a game show. And so that's more or less the game. Now, like I mentioned, Takeshi Kitano was a Japanese comedian. So he...
Could you do one of his classic jokes that he was known for?
Oh, yeah. How come every time Japanese people want to have a good time, there's always some ignorant-ass Japanese person trying to fuck it up?
Was that Chris Rock?
No, that's Takeshi Kitano.
That's Takeshi Kitano. Oh,
originally.
Okay. I like that you did it in his
a lot of people don't
actual
know that.
dialect. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what he sounds like. And so he was a comedian. So obviously this whole thing is silly.
It's a goof.
And it is played quite silly on their end. They have these Emerald Guard people all throughout, and in many of the rounds of obstacles or competition, the Emerald Guard is trying to stop the people or distract them, or there's some like obstacle course type things that look like you said, mud run events basically. Yeah. But the people might have a helmet on where they have the paper thing, and there's guards with water guns trying to shoot them out. And if you make it to the end with your paper ring intact, you move on. So they played a big part in it. There was basically another guy named Higashi who was played like Takeshi's advisor on the show, and they would do skits together in between the events. So there was a whole bunch of Japanese comedy sketch stuff going on as well.
So it's a variety show plus game show.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all over the place and just incredibly wacky. And I mean, some of the competitions that the people were doing, there was like a lot of water-based, which was kind of very muddy water. Stuff like you've got to cross the water by using this rope swing and landing on a small platform, or there were rocks, and some of them would sink the second you touch them, and some of them wouldn't. And so you tried to run across them as fast as you could without falling in. There were gaps between them. You had to jump and things like that. I watched one couples episode, and there was one where every couple was where they were split up from each other and put into two tunnels that kind of looked like they were covered by that thing you did in PE as a kid with the parachute, where everybody's the parachute,
flipping it up and down, up and down.
So it kind of looked like that. So you couldn't see where your partner was, and you were on opposite sides of this big field that was filled with 95 beds, and there was like 100 couples, and they lifted up the covers, and you had to find your partner and get in a bed together.
Okay.
And
then have a baby.
Well, that was optional. That was for bonus points.
That was bonus points?
Yeah, you got a bonus paper ring if you did that.
You got like a bonus baby.
But, so however many, it was kind of a musical chairs situation. You had to find an empty bed once you found your partner and get in the bed in order to not be eliminated. So there's all sorts of weird stuff like that. There was one I saw where they were in an earthquake simulator, and one person was like down on all fours, and the other person was on all fours on top of that person.
Okay.
And you had to not fall off of the bottom person for the length of the earthquake simulator.
That'd be so hard.
There's a log roller thing where you're, again, going over water, and there are rolling logs that you have to run across. There was a rotating surfboard thing that popped up quite a few times, it seemed.
So they had to jump over obstacles. They had to
jump on the surfboard and and then jump over obstacles. And I mean, there were just all sorts of crazy games. There were mazes. There were...
You had to run through a door, and some had paper and some had an actual door.
Yeah, so you just slam into a wall on it if you picked the wrong one. Kind of like a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner situation. Yeah. So there's all sorts of crazy ass little games, and again, just each time more and more people got eliminated until the storming the castle, which usually had a single digit number of people remaining.
Yes.
And I mean, that's the basic gist of the show. Over time, some things changed. Technology improved a little bit. I
was gonna say the first ones that I watched early in the show, it looked like Blair Witch. The team that did Blair Witch Project was filming it.
Probably about right.
It was rough.
And so they upgraded at some point to laser guns instead of the paper circle and water guns. And so in that version, at the end when you were storming the castle, I think they even had like laser planes flying over, shooting lasers down at you. And in that version, whoever eliminated Count Takeshi won the sole prize instead of splitting it up, because in the previous version, multiple teams would be doing water damage to the circle or whatever. This one, just whoever got the laser shot won. So it got a little better over time, I guess. There was a point where Count Takeshi he had gotten into a bit of a tiff with some reporters and paparazzi over some private photos they'd taken of him or something. Okay. And he apparently like physically assaulted somebody and he got in trouble legally. And his punishment was that he couldn't be on the show for a little bit, or he couldn't be on TV for a little bit as part of his punishment. And so they made like a Takeshi head doll, like a mascot head that somebody else wore for the episodes that he couldn't film.
And this was a goofy sketch?
This was just the show.
This was actual assault?
That was actual assault.
Oh, okay.
But there were a lot of goofy sketches on the show. There were a lot of characters. Like I mentioned, Higashi and the Emerald Guard. There were several other recurring characters. Some of them like weird sumo wrestler type people. Some of them weird monster type people. A lot of other strange mascot type things. Some mascots of like popular Japanese anime characters and things like that, like Ultraman, which is an anime or a manga or something along those lines.
Okay.
He would pop up and his co-characters or whatever would pop up on the show. But it was a really weird show, and it kind of was the dawn of the weird Japanese game show thing. We talk about a lot how there are a lot of weird Japanese game shows where weird things happen. This was kind of the dawn of that. This was the beginning of more or less the weird Japanese game show phase. But I mean, it was a big hit in Japan. Like I said, it ran from 86 to 90. And when they were making the movie Battle Royale,
great.
You familiar with that?
Great movie.
Yes. So it's basically Hunger Games before Hunger Games.
Yeah, but way darker.
And so in that, because of this show, more or less, they cast Takeshi to play like the head teacher.
That was Takeshi?
Yes.
That guy was an asshole.
Of all the people in the Battle Royale competition. He was training them all to learn how to kill each other and be the last one alive. So because he hosted this show where it was constantly people getting eliminated, they cast him in that role in the Battle Royale movie, which I think also started as a manga, which is a comic book in Japan.
When I saw that movie, I don't remember who gave it to me, but it was middle school, or no, it was high school. And I know it was high school because I had one of those giant binders that you put all your CDs and DVDs in. And
yep,
it was
it was a phenomenal story.
Like it came on a blank CD and somebody had written it. It was what's that called when you
burned CD?
A burned DVD.
Okay, yeah.
And so I felt like I had something
special.
Yeah.
And it was like
honestly
the first time you bought
me.
Ecstasy.
It was a good movie. It was very scary.
So that was what Takeshi went on to do, was to scare you on a burnt DVD.
Yeah.
So Takeshi did the commentary of the show from his role as Count Takeshi. He would provide that. And like I said, it was very popular in Japan, and then it gained a following around the world.
Yeah.
And it would be, for the most part, there were a couple different ways that it happened. Because it aired in dozens of countries around the world. Obviously, very few of those countries speak Japanese. Like none of them, probably, outside of Japan. I don't think there's any other country.
Yeah, they're on an island by themselves.
Right. So nobody else speaks Japanese. So what they would do, there were a couple different ways it was approached. Number one, they had local actors just dub over a direct translation of everything that was happening on the show.
Okay.
Number two, and this is what like Australia and the UK ended up doing somewhat famously, was they would have people narrate it, just their own narration. So they would have a comedian providing their own commentary and not translating the commentary that was in the Japanese edition.
Yeah.
And then also a couple countries made their own version of it. So there was an Indonesian version of the show and a Thailand version of the show and a Vietnam version of the show. Those weren't until like the 2010s or so.
Okay.
Because it's been airing for so long in some form or fashion in many of these countries that it still has popularity. In the US, in 1990, Fox tried to produce their own version of it called King of the Mountain.
Okay.
But it only had 10 contestants instead of 86 to 142. So that kills a lot of the effect of it. And that only had one episode air. And then CBS in 1993 made a version called Storm the Castle that I think also had one episode air.
Wow.
And so
nobody was ready to see people get really hurt on TV at that point.
So that was it. But they made 2 NES games of it in the 80s.
Really?
And they required
Mario
that. No, it was like
there was a castle in that.
That pad that you ran on for track and field. Remember when you got track and field and duck hunt? The duck hunt had the laser gun, and the track and field had a pad. It was kind of like what we later had as the DDR pad.
Okay.
With little things on it, and you're supposed to run on it, and
But did you sit on your knees and slap it with your hands?
1,000%.
So you're a cheater.
Yes,
so
that's how you do it to go faster. But so they made 2 games using that on the NES. I think probably only in Japan.
Can you imagine being a parent and buying your kid that, and you're really excited, and you get them this pad, and they go in their room, and you just hear this slap, 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 and you go in there, and your kid is just on his knees, just slapping the shit out of this pad with his hands, and you're like, oh, I made a mistake.
I mean, when you hear those noises and walk into your kid's room, that's probably the best case scenario. So it really depends on your perspective.
Your mom's like, go talk to your son. And your dad's like, what? And he's like, he's going to hurt himself. He's doing it too hard.
Yeah. So that was pretty much how it went. The UK and Australia versions ran in a few other English speaking countries like India, Netherlands, things like that, where or even to a point where some countries would then do translations of the English and Australian commentary. I guess Australia.
So it
is
was
also
the game
English,
of telephone.
Yeah, more or less. So that was pretty much Takeshi's Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there were a couple attempts in the U.S. to recreate it into its own thing over here. Neither of them worked until 2003, when Spike TV.
Spike had some cool shows.
Yeah, had some fun shows in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
The aughts, is that what we call them?
I think so. That
this became relevant in the US again because there were a couple guys that worked for the Merv Griffin company. We talked about Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, etc. They got together and decided to take Takeshi's Castle and re-edit it into a show that they called Most Extreme Elimination Challenge.
Yeah.
And basically everything was extreme in the early 2000s, so they jokingly decided to be the most extreme, and that's how we got Most Extreme Elimination Challenge, or what it eventually became abbreviated as MXC, which I don't understand because we're missing a word there.
Right.
Because we got M for most, we got X for extreme, which I'll let slide. And then we just skipped over elimination in this abbreviation, straight to the C, MXC.
Oh, yeah. MXC sounds like a street drug.
It is a pretty good one.
Dude, you get any of that MXC.
To be honest with you, it's one of my favorites.
Dude, every day at 10:30 p.m. I do MXC.
On Spike TV.
On Spike TV.
So it aired there from 2003 to 2007. What they did was much different than what all of the other countries that adapted the show had previously done. What they did is they took footage from just random episodes of the show and edited it all together as if it were a competition between two teams.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a point for your team for completing an obstacle, basically. And they would be two fake teams. Like, it would be like Today's episode is plumbers versus architects.
Yeah.
Or just random things like that.
Yeah.
And the commentary, which was still in video form done by, Takeshi and Higashi and those guys, they gave them new character names. So instead of it being storming Takeshi's castle, Takeshi was now a character called Vic Romano, who was a TV announcer, a budding TV announcer.
Yeah.
And so that was all he just was dressed all silly, but he was a budding TV announcer. And then he had his sidekick, Higashi, was Kenny Blankenship. And there are a lot of the other recurring characters in the show and in the little bits and sketches they did. They became, there was Guy Ledouche was the field reporter.
Yeah.
And so they created all these characters for these people, and they spoke in those characters using the sketches, using the cutaways to their talking and things like that to narrate this team-to-team competition.
Yeah.
And like I said, it would frequently be clips from episodes that were years apart used and purported to be in the same competition. There was no storming the castle bit at the end or anything, because that's not what this show was. This show was a 2-team competition.
Nobody cares about the castle.
And so
anymore.
it was just whoever had the most points at the end for completing the obstacles. And it was usually like 2-1, because it was more fun to show people wiping out and failing, and funnier to comment on that. And that was basically the way that MXC adapted this. And it became wildly popular on Spike TV. It ran from 2003 to 2007. A couple times they did an almost live, was what they called it, version of it in Florida, I believe, where they did actually set up a whole course and had people competing on it. So it was new, fresh footage for the first time, I guess, really. But that was like the only time they really did that. And even for those, they still used cutaways to Takeshi and Higashi and everything for all those little bits. And when they did do that, I think they had a couple celebrities on it as well. And for every person that spoke, even the English speaking people, they later overdubbed it with another voice actor so that the lips didn't match up and everything. So it's like watching the other episodes or Godzilla or anything else that has ever been dubbed over that looks fairly ridiculous. So they did. This was not the first time this was done in the United States. More famously, probably, this is what I call the Power Rangers method.
Oh,
are you familiar with how Power Rangers exists?
It's when two Power Rangers love each other.
Very much. They pray very hard to God.
So hard.
So Power Rangers was a Japanese show also called Super Sentai. So all of the
Super Hentai?
Sentai.
Oh, that's different.
Yes. That other show I do like quite a bit though.
I like that one as well.
So Super Sentai, all of the parts of the Power Rangers in their morphed form, where they're in their Power Rangers outfits fighting against the
spandex when they're in their
when they're in their spandex and helmets.
Okay.
Fighting against the Putty Patrol and Rita Repulsa and all those people.
I imagine like if you live in a very religious household, your mom is constantly on Putty Patrol.
I don't know what that means.
Like, opening your doors, making sure you're not slapping your SNES pad
on your NES. So Super Sentai, all the footage from Power Rangers where they're doing battle in costume is just from a show called Super Sentai in Japan.
Yeah.
And then all of the stuff where they're high school kids in America, that was just shot around the existing Japanese footage of people fighting that they had.
Wow.
And then they just had them, when they were in the costumes, they just overdubbed the American actors saying lines and whatnot while they're in the costume, because you can't see their faces because they've got helmets on. And that was how that show was made.
That's amazing.
They just used whatever footage they had and made up a show around it. And so it was because, so this guy named Haim Saban.
Mm-hmm. That's a real name.
Yeah. He's an Israeli-American businessman. He was in Japan in the 80s for business. And his hotel, that was like the only thing on TV. And so he just watched a shit ton of it. And he was like, we need to make this show in America. And that was how that show. They bought the rights to use the footage of the show. And so if you watch Power Rangers, which I'm sure you do a lot, the first season, so the Rita Repulsa, it was like, she wasn't Rita Repulsa in the Japanese version, whatever.
Yeah.
It was just, some crazy Japanese witch or woman or something like that.
Okay.
And so all of her speaking is very clearly dubbed over. Her lips do not match up with what she is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting in the second season, they started filming their own Rita Repulsa scenes specifically for the American show.
Right.
But they had already established in the first scene what Rita Repulsa's voice sounds like, and that actress didn't look the part. So they would film those scenes and then still overdub them in English with the actress who did it for season 1 going forward as well. And all the weird, like, I watched the original Power Rangers. I was in the fan club. I was a big Power Rangers.
Do you like the pink Power Ranger?
Of course. Oh, and speaking of, so if you'll remember, the pink Power Ranger, she had a little skirt built into her outfit.
Okay.
Kimberly. So there was Jason, Billy, Zach, Kimberly, and Trini.
And what?
Trini. She was the Yellow Ranger. Trini. We don't say that anymore, first of all.
Oh, we don't.
Trini was the Yellow Ranger. She did not have a skirt built into her thing. Because in the Japanese show, that wasn't a chick. That was a dude.
Yeah.
But
they just have one chick in a group of 6 dudes.
Five
well,
dudes. Later, Tommy got added to be the 6th. He was the Green Ranger and later the White Ranger. But so that was why the Yellow Ranger didn't have a skirt, even though she was a girl, was because in Super Sentai, she wasn't. It was a dude. And we just stole all of their fighting content and put weird high school scenes in the midst of it.
It's more of like a Frankenstein situation. You take 2 things that are useless by themselves.
And then what do you create with them?
And you make one thing
that kills a bunch of townspeople.
That
throws a little girl into a pond until she drowns.
First of all, that girl deserved to die. And I know that's a hot take, and nobody thinks that. Wow. But read in between the lines. That girl had a gun.
No. Did you watch the movie?
I watched Super Hentai. That girl had a gun. She kept shooting everybody.
I watched the 1933 Frankenstein movie a few weeks ago.
Were the special effects good?
They were great. And they just really missed the point of the book, if I'm being honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd they swing and miss?
Well, they made Frankenstein. Frankenstein is the doctor.
Right.
They made Frankenstein's monster.
Well, Frankenstein was made. It was 2 people that came together to make one thing.
Okay, I'm glad we keep establishing this. Very similar to how Power Rangers are made,
Correct.
by the way.
Yeah.
So Frankenstein made the monster, and in the movie, he kind of just went around killing people. Mm-hmm. He killed the little girl kind of on accident because he's
hugging her, right?
Or they were throwing flowers into the water, and then they ran out of flowers, and so he just threw her. And
was she wearing a flower dress?
No, I don't know. He was dumb. He was a monster. So that and he gets burned to death in a windmill at the end after chasing people around and stuff like that.
By the townspeople?
Yeah, the townspeople with their pitchforks and torches. They burn him in the windmill. But in the book, the whole he gets smart and eloquent and can speak well, and the whole thing is about who's the real monster, Frankenstein for toying with God's creation this and things like that. And that's the whole lesson of that movie or of that book. That's not the lesson of the movie at all. It's monster bad, kill him is kind of the lesson.
I feel like it's very simple in the book. The monster is still bad. So they're saying in the book that you can murder somebody, but if you learn how to speak like a second language, you're
No,
like
he
a
doesn't
new
go
person.
around murdering people really in the book.
Well, in the book, he still kills a girl, right?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Was that just a thing that they put in the movie, and now everybody thinks he kills a girl in the book?
Yeah, I mean, you know why? Because Frankenstein was written by a woman, and they're trying to undermine her work because they don't respect the creation of strong, independent women. Mary Shelley, get it, girl.
Does monster kill girl? I'm just gonna Google that and see what pops up.
that'll get you to some super hentai, I think.
A Maryland couple has filed a wrongful death suit against the company, alleging that their product killed their 14-year-old daughter. Oh, it's Monster Energy.
So Monster does kill girls.
Monster does kill girl. Oh my gosh.
By the way, also in the credits of the movie, it says based on the novel by saying based on the
Pushed
novel
by Sapphire?
Mary. Yeah, Pushed by Sapphire was based on the novel by Mary Shelley. Instead of saying that, it said like based on the novel by Mrs. Duncan Shelley or whatever. Like it said her husband's name instead of, and just put Mrs. in front of it. Like this man's possession wrote this book. And isn't that so good?
She kind of started as a dum-dum and taught herself to write.
Yeah.
So she's kind of the monster too.
Who was the monster all along? So anyway, Frankenstein, Power Rangers, Takeshi's Castle. Backtracking. Yeah. So that was, like I was saying, MXC was not the first time that we have done that because we did it with Power Rangers in 1992 or whenever. Power Rangers
Saved by
out.
the Bell.
Really? Mm-hmm. Explain that to me.
So all of the actors were, none of them could speak English. So
Screech and Mr. Belding, etc.
Right. Screech definitely couldn't speak. Screech could only make high-pitched frequencies.
That's why that was
noises. Yeah.
Now I'm following.
And
I never understood that.
What they did is they would hold a dummy across from them off screen, and they would move the lips like it's a Muppet. And so the actors would just mirror the lip movements from the dummy.
So it was almost like a Mr. Ed situation.
Yeah.
But without the peanut butter.
Without the peanut butter.
And then they would have voice actors come in later.
Yes.
To dub over the mouth movements.
Right. And then they would also dub over the voice actors.
So was this a Japanese series at some point?
Well, I mean, Japanese people watched it.
Okay. Yeah. So that was MXC. It went off air in 2007. There've been a couple Takeshi's Castle specials in the meanwhile. I think, like I said, in the 2010s, there were a couple countries that made their own version of Takeshi's Castle, the Indonesian Takeshi's Castle Thailand, etc. And then there have been a couple other shows inspired by Takeshi's Castle, you might say.
I would say many
like
shows.
Like Wipeout.
Yes.
They got sued by Takeshi's Castle.
Why?
For being too much like it. For having people getting hurt doing obstacles. And they settled the lawsuit. Nobody knows what the settlement was, but there was a lawsuit there. And I think Ninja Warrior was made by the same company as Takeshi's Castle. A lot of the obstacles are kind of Ninja Warrior-like.
Yeah.
Except they're just kind of out in a field somewhere instead of...
I don't know where this field was, but it was an unkempt field.
What I liked about it was that it felt like it was something that, like, one of your friend's uncles who has a lot of land and doesn't really care what his kids do as long as they're staying busy and out of his hair would...
I mean, this uncle is for sure bald in my head right now.
Yeah, definitely receding.
Your friend's uncle that has land.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He's bald.
I mean, that's the first thing that popped into my head.
Okay. Good word association. So, I mean, it's out in a field somewhere. All of these obstacles are in some dirty, muddy field/wooded area with a big fake castle.
Yeah.
And
it looks like if you were to drive by someone's land in the middle of nowhere and there's a paintball field.
Yes.
That's what the castle looks like.
Exactly. So So in that way, that's how it's much different from Ninja Warrior. Ninja Warrior is kind of like a compact
clean
course. Yeah, exactly. Hygienic.
Yeah. And honestly, if you would have told me that the Takeshi's Castle was filmed in 7 different fields, I would have been like, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't dispute that from what I see on your show.
I've done a lot of reading on it, and I can't dispute that at all. I think there were a few different places where they would move things around to shoot it. But I thought that was one of the most appealing things about it to me. Like
the dirtiness of it?
The realness of it.
Oh, okay.
Like compared to...
And the people on the show, too, I think attest to that. Those were just normal, everyday people.
Yeah. I think if you compare it to something like Wipeout or Holy Moly or whatever that mini golf show or whatever, like those are there's cool obstacles and stuff, but they're in very sterile environments. They're very contained. There's live audiences around them. I can tell that they put a lot of work into building a stage somewhere for this and everything. And I don't know, that takes some of the charm out of it. Like Takeshi's Castle looks like something I can pay somebody $35 to go do. And I have to sign a whole bunch of waivers.
Yeah. But as long as...
But it's not going anywhere.
As long as your friends that go through it have a loose helmet on, you're like...
Yeah.
Dude, you can't sue me.
And the chaos of it. There was so much chaos because like there were up to 142 people.
Yeah, that's insane.
So it was just bonkers, and there was just person after person after. If you watch Wipeout now, it's like, all right, here's the 4 contestants. So we're going to show you every little bit of boring shit they do trying to hop across this thing. When you've got 100 people, you got a whole lot of crazy wipeouts. You got a whole lot of impressive stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you can feature in a single episode. Because you've got a lot of people doing obstacles.
I think it's crucial to have that amount of people too, so that you can turn off any emotional attachment you have to these people, because they get very hurt. I don't want to hear about someone's cute backstory.
Yeah, about how their mom had cancer and they stood by them until the end. Her dying breath and her mother's dying wish was that she would come to Takeshi's Castle and take on Count Takeshi and bring it home for her family and her hometown, which is suffering incredibly high unemployment rates right now because they were a coal town and coal's being phased out for cleaner energy sources. And because of the coal, that's what gave her mom the cancer and she died. And you don't have that in Takeshi's Castle.
I don't want that. I don't ever want to hear that.
You don't get backstories of people. I guess.
No, you don't.
So we just did Wheel of Fortune. One of your positives of it was you just get right in. Hi, I'm Edna, and you move on.
I think across the board that is successful because you want to see the game, but I think it is imperative in this game because the point of this game is to watch people get really hurt. And I think in order to
if you knew that girl's mom died of colon cancer, you couldn't laugh as hard.
Yeah, even if I knew that girl's name,
her eating shit because a log.
They're not people, right? They're contestants at that point.
They're contestants for our entertainment. They're a mob of people.
Yes.
Made to entertain us. And some of the events are very mob-like because there will be an obstacle climb the wall thing, and it's just everybody go at once.
Yes.
Everybody climb the wall.
That, to me...
Not one at a time or anything.
That's the one obstacle that immediately put mud runs into my head. Because there's always something, or usually something like that. There's a giant wall. Everybody has to work together to make a human chain that you can crawl up and go over the wall and then go on to your next mud run.
Yeah, it's like what a few years ago.
I have it on my notes right now. Zombie run.
We did a zombie 5K.
We have to go through this.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to be like I didn't think it was going to be a grueling.
It was
dirty.
Very grueling. It was. Here's the thing about the zombie 5K. I don't run. I don't like running.
Right.
I do like fun, and I do like not being fat. So I thought, okay, zombie 5K. You're being chased by zombies in this obstacle course 5K. It's a more fun way to do something that is going to be a pretty good workout for me that I don't want to do normally. So, I trained for the 5K, got to where I could, run 3 miles at a time. And I was like,
how long did that take you?
I don't know, a few weeks.
Wow, brag.
Well, I started with like half a mile.
Well, yeah, it's like couch to 5K.
I had to work my way
couch to 5K, I think the first 2 weeks is just like get up and walk.
Well, I don't know if I could do it now, but this was like 5 years ago. But for that, so we showed up there knowing that there's going to be some zombies chasing us while we're doing a 5K. I think that's pretty much all we knew.
I think so.
Going in. And we got a flag belt with 3 flags on it.
Mm-hmm. Our life flags.
Yes. And if you lost all 3 flags, you were dead, but you still did the rest of the 5K, but you weren't.
Which sucks because you're like, you finish the 5K and you don't get a shitty plastic medal.
Right, exactly. But if you had at least 1 flag left at the end, you survived the zombie 5K.
Mm-hmm.
And what made it difficult was there was probably like an eighth of a mile where we were just in thigh-high creek.
Well, that was the first thing you did.
Right. It was very early in the thing. We ran maybe we ran an eighth of a mile. Or no, maybe we ran, I don't know, a quarter of a mile at the beginning. And then we were in thigh-high creek water.
Like wading through it. And then there was a little muddy hill you had to get up.
With one little rope that just got slick as hell because everybody's muddy hands were grabbing it. And it was very hard to
There were 2 ropes. There was one rope that was like the real rope you needed to climb up. And then there was like, I couldn't do it. Here's the second rope. And we were all like determined to do that first rope. Even though you grab it and you would fall back down.
Right. Just fall back.
People behind you. It's one of those things too where it doesn't look that hard.
And you're
so
like,
you're
what
waiting
are these
in
idiots
line.
doing? Climb the thing.
Just climb the... Oh my God.
Because your feet are so slippery on the muddy hill. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was tough. And there were plenty of other obstacles. There
was a net climb.
There was a net climb. There were wall climbs. There was like fire that you had to jump over at one part.
Yeah, like little fire piles.
I just remember I think I lost 1 flag kind of early in the thing, in the first third for sure.
And I'm trying. Did we even see zombies at this point?
We saw I think zombies right before the creek thing, I think. Oh. Like as we were going into the creek thing, there were zombies right before it. And then I remember we were probably like 2.5 miles into the thing. What's a 5K? Like 3.1?
3.2.
3.2. So we were probably like 2.5 miles in. And normally if you're running a 5K and you're decently in shape, 2.5 miles in, maybe you're at 20, 25 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
We were probably easily an hour in at this point because of all the obstacles and things like that.
And soaking wet and exhausted.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of the zombies, the quote volunteer zombies, because you had to be 18 or older to participate in the 5K as a runner, but not as a zombie. So there were kids that were zombies, and kids have infinity energy.
Yes.
And they don't have to wade through the water and do a 5K. So I remember we're like 2.5 miles in and we're jumping over fire. And there's this kid's quote unquote zombie that's like, I don't know, 12 years old, 13 years old, that is just on my tail in a full out sprint. And I'm just looking over my shoulder, sprinting as fast as I can, 2.5 miles into an hour of a 5K.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to die at that point.
Yeah.
In real life, I thought I was going to die trying to sprint away from this fucking kid that was just obsessed with getting my goddamn flag.
Yeah.
And I think he did. I think he got a flag.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I ended this with 1 flag.
I ended with 1 flag
and
also.
There had to be one. Because I didn't know. I wanted to go behind me and put my hand on his head. But I was like, you probably can't do that.
Yeah, I don't think you could stiff
for
arm.
legality.
We had to there was an army crawl under a barbed wire thing in the mud.
Yeah.
Right near the end, too. So there was difficult stuff. I felt like I stormed Takeshi's castle.
Well, here's the thing with that. It was so difficult, and they knew it was going to be so dirty and gross. There was just a shoe pile for you to donate your shoes, which were now caked in mud.
I took my shoes off, and I threw them on the pile.
Yes.
My shoes were done.
You didn't have a
these
choice.
shoes
What was
done.
your choice? Destroy your car, take your shoes off, I guess, and put them in the trunk and then drive home?
Yeah. It was fun, though. But
it's crazy because it was uncovered that it was it was like a scheme to get shoes. The whole company,
the whole zombie
was just
a shoe. It's actually run by Toms, and those are the shoes that they donate.
That's right. So they do technically donate the shoes, but they're
also making a profit on it by making people do the zombie run, and then they get the shoes for free.
Right.
And so those are the shoes that they donate to Africa or whatever.
And the kids that chase you at the end, those are the people that run Toms. It's a group of children that run Toms.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Wow. So yeah, these are the things you learn on this podcast.
It's a whole bunch of Greta Thunbergs. Recycling Recycling shoes.
We need to save the shoes of the world. We will be no shoes in 25 years if we don't save the shoes of the zombies. That's my Greta Thunberg.
Of the zombies at the very end. Everybody's like, yeah, I can get out. Did she just say zombies
what?
at the end there?
What is Greta talking about now? So that was, and the problem was we kind of got ahead of the pack because we were faster than the majority of people. Mm-hmm. And so when we get to the zombies, there's fewer of us for the zombies to chase. If you're in a big herd of people
you can just
and there's only 8 zombies, you can
in the
blend in. Yeah, exactly. So, but that's what I like about Takeshi's Castle. I really liked when you got some of the just crazy 100 people trying to climb a wall, 100 people trying to hop over to the same thing at the same time, trying to run through walls that may be paper or maybe a wall that you're going to dislocate your shoulder on.
Yes.
That's the fun of it. That's what makes it great. That's what makes it very enjoyable to watch. In its original form, I don't speak Japanese. I don't know about you.
Prove it.
How?
That's good. I don't know what that meant.
That's Indian for hello. Native American.
How?
Maize is yellow. Corn. Japanese. Sushi means raw fish.
Yes, correct.
So I don't know Japanese, so I don't know, it's hard to properly grade it based on the original Japanese version because I've only seen overdubbed versions or the MXC version of it.
Yeah.
Which is quite enjoyable. I got to imagine the original Japanese one with all their sketches intact is probably a really wild thing to watch.
Yeah.
But I liked it. How would you improve it?
How would I improve it?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say something before we go into how to improve it.
Okay, please.
This show helped me understand kamikaze fighters.
Wow, that's quite a leap. Go on.
Well, I'll tell you why.
Okay.
If you think about it, or let's say you're just reading a book and it's like, oh yeah, there were these fighter pilots that would go on suicide missions and crash their planes for, the love of trying to win this war.
Right. The love of country.
The love of country. And then you watch Takeshi's Castle and you see man, woman, older, younger.
Children.
I didn't see the children one, but yeah, children run as fast as they can into walls, just hoping it's paper for a television show. And let's be honest, no money because there were 8 people ever that won this show.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that, if you're going gung-ho on a game show, now switch that and put that into wartime where anything is possible, Kevin Garnett, and you have, I can totally understand it now.
Do you think that in 1990 or 1993 when we tried King of the Mountain and Storm the Castle in the US, do you think that if those shows had caught on in America the way they wanted them to, if they had caught on the way that Takeshi's Castle caught on in Japan, do you think we would be in the position we are in Iraq right now?
Do
you think we'd have better soldiers?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
You should have to go
through
Takeshi's
in and out of
Castle.
Iraq.
Like Bud School, SEALs, Green Beret, throw it out. You have to go through Takeshi's Castle. And if you can make it through Takeshi's Castle, whatever, you can choose. Do you want to be a SEAL? Do you want to be a Green Beret?
But here's the thing I'm kind of bummed about is, we've considered, ever since World War II, when they sneak attacked us and did all that other bad stuff.
Right.
We've considered Japan to be one of our strongest allies, probably because we kind of like took over their country for a little bit after World War II and everything, and didn't let them have a military for a while and all that stuff. I'm kind of bummed that as such a great ally of us, we keep PlayStation in business. They didn't get Bin Laden for us. early on.
You think they should have gotten Bin Laden?
Well, I mean, just send one of these Takeshi people in there. Find out.
Okay, see all those
what
caves right there?
Paper door Bin Laden's,
run into it. Run straight through into that cave.
It might not be a cave, by the way. It might be a wall. But if it's a cave, Bin Laden might be in there.
Yeah. And then pretend his head is a paper plate, and you need to
shoot it with a water gun
to get through it. Yeah. Also, I thought it was pretty crazy. So I'm going to read just a couple of stats on injuries that occurred on this show. Because
I'm glad that you have these stats.
Because the show does not make it look like it is painful. I think that the contestants popping up with big ass smiles on their face.
Oh, that was crazy.
I'm always like, oh,
the way I just ate
don't
shit.
feel pain in Japan. I don't understand this. So across the show, and this was the 4-year run where it was 86 to 90.
Yeah.
41 broken ribs, 19 broken jaws, 312 bruised chins, 282 bruised shins, 9 people knocked out, 35 concussions, 276 people winded, 2 fractured skulls, 112 black eyes, and 62 torn muscles.
What do you think their insurance was like?
I mean, when they started the show, the insurance limits were probably pretty modest. And then after one season, they were probably like, we need to...
That's why it only went for 4 seasons, because...
They couldn't go for their insurance premiums after a while.
I mean, I think that for it being 4 seasons, I think there were a decent amount of episodes, over 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was like MXC was able to pull from a lot of content.
Huge catalog.
And they would even reuse content from time to time just because it didn't matter because it was
funnier,
made up. But
okay, my make it better is nothing. It's
that's kind of where I stood.
Multiple contestants should be able to go through one obstacle, similar to how they did the wall.
Right.
I think that 2 people should be able to go through the stone jumping or.
What about?
I want to see the maze. I want to see the beehive maze. I want 2 people to go through it because it was too easy for the 2 guys in the maze to capture these people.
It was so there was a maze with a bunch of doors,
and you would see it from like bird's eye view.
And there were 2 Emerald Guard people in there that you had to get from one top corner to the bottom corner on the other side through all these rooms with the doors. And there were 2 Emerald Guards that started in the middle, and they could just like catch you and hold you down and try and throw you. So there were a couple doors that opened out into...
They would black hand you.
Yeah.
One of the guards had a black hand with ink, and if they caught
rub
you,
it all
they would
over
just
your
rub
face.
it on your face, and you would be like...
And you look like Al Jolson running through the obstacle course. But I think that could get a little more hectic, probably, to your point.
That's fine.
But yeah, like I said, I think what's great about it is how hectic it is, how nonsensical it is, how lo-fi the whole thing is, that it's just in a field. It's not very, these aren't the greens at the Masters. This is just
the opposite. These are the browns at the amateurs. These are the amateur browns. I'm going to Google that real quick. Amateur brown.
Please don't. Please don't.
Oh my God. Monster Energy's killed more people.
Yeah. I mean, I came away the same as you, that I could not think of what I could do to improve this game. Because...
Are you joking? You don't have one particular thing you would like to see in this game where there's a lot of water and there's a lot of people falling into water?
Sharks?
Yes.
So here's the thing. Normally I would bring sharks into any of these. Like if it was Wipeout, yeah, I need some sharks.
Okay.
But this, I'm seeing a lot of injuries. I'm hearing a lot of statistics about injuries from you. People are already putting life and limb on the line. So it was hard for me to raise the stakes too much more, aside from like, oh, you get murdered if you fail this,
Yeah. Like behind one of the doors is just a whole bunch of knives sticking out at you.
Right. Well, I mean, and again, I imagine that, harikari, is that what it's called? The pride suicide?
Oh.
Probably a lot of people doing that anyway.
Yeah. Will Ferrell did that character.
Yeah, that was my favorite. When Will Ferrell would just put on those big glasses and just stab himself in the gut with a big katana. Yeah. It's
your
hard
make it better is nothing?
My make it better is nothing. It's so crazy. I mean, here's my make it better. Make me learn Japanese so I can watch these in their original form.
So it's like a comp. So it's
fully understand it.
Ooh, that's good.
Because
it's like Rosetta Stone.
Because
so
I don't want us to redo this because we're gonna put too much shiny paint on it, gussy it up too much. Mm-hmm. It's gonna lose the core of what it is. You know, it's like trying to tell Picasso, like, hey, people's heads aren't square, right? You gotta fix that. You gotta round it off.
Hey, you know what's cool?
$1 billion.
You know what's cool? Saggy clocks. You know what's cooler? Straight clocks.
That was Dolly.
Llama.
Salvador.
Oh, the mustache.
Yeah.
What did Picasso have? Was Picasso's head square? So he
was right. He thought everybody else.
Everybody's head is. He thought everybody's head is normal.
Square. Yeah. No, not Dada. Dadaism is a type of art that I was thinking of around the same time period. But
he's got a flat top of his head.
He did have a flat top of his head. Maybe that's why. But yeah, I wouldn't improve it. I don't think there's much we could do other than learn Japanese to fully. That's everybody's homework. Learn Japanese so you can watch this show, the original Japanese form, and explain to me how the sketches work and how funny they are.
First, teach you. Right. So they need to learn Japanese.
They need to learn it. They need
watch
to teach
the show.
it to me.
Come and teach you Japanese. Then you can watch the show. And then you can finally talk about it with that person that you instructed to watch the show.
Exactly. So we'll do another episode on this a few years from now when we're both fluent in Japanese.
Man. I would love to be fluent in another language.
It's kind of. Have you seen Man in the High Castle?
No.
On Amazon Prime?
Mm-mm.
So it's like the Japanese and the Nazis won World War II.
Ooh.
And now America is split up between the Japanese Pacific states and the American Reich or something like that.
Okay.
Kind of split up by the Rocky Mountains. And I think maybe one of the missed opportunities from that show was that they didn't bring Takeshi's Castle over into the U.S.
Yeah.
when they had that opportunity.
Yeah. And all of society is run by this. Like, if you want to purchase food, you have to beat Takeshi's Castle in order to get it.
Yeah. I think that would have made the show a lot better. I think it would have made the book it's based on a lot better. Philip K. Dick. We always talk about him on this podcast.
Love Philip K. Dick.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts on Takeshi's Castle? What's your buzzer rating also? How many buzzers out of 5 is Takeshi's Castle?
I'm going to go with a very bruised 4.5 buzzers.
I'm going to give it a 5.
Wow.
I've never done this.
Is this your first 5?
I've never done this before.
I thought last episode you said nothing's going to be a 5.
I didn't know enough about Takeshi's Castle at the time. I've broadened my horizons to the land of the horizon sun. And I see now why Japanese game shows are so fucking batshit now.
Entertaining.
Because this is what they started at 40 years ago. Like, our bar was a guy with a mustache saying, "This oat is grown in a field where you can also find poppies. What is..." I don't know oats, but
barley.
That's where we were 40 years ago.
Yeah.
This is where they were 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's why they have game shows now where it's like, see if you can identify this person by tasting their butt or whatever it is.
By tasting their butt. And it was like a family game show.
It was, yeah. Do you think you could do it? Is it mom?
No, I wouldn't be able to
dad?
identify a single person by tasting their butt.
Well, it's because you're American. Anything else to add? Takeshi's Castle.
I don't. I'm
MXC.
in awe. I don't know what to say.
All right.
MXC was great. It was funny. I remember watching it. I remember watching a lot of Spike TV, and this show is wonderful. I would recommend looking this up on YouTube.
Watch Takeshi's Castle. Watch some of the British version if you can, because that's closer to the pure form.
Yeah.
With you still being able to understand some of the commentary. Watch the Japanese version if you can find it without having to understand the commentary, because who fucking cares? It's just funny.
This show is a visual show.
It's good. transcends culture. It transcends language. That's why this show is a 5 buzzers out of 5. Takeshi's Castle. Loved it. Look us up on Instagram at Come On Down Show. ComeOnDownShow.com. Email ComeOnDownShow@gmail.com. If you just want to chat, if you want any advice, if you're going through some difficult stuff and you need somebody to talk to.
Yeah. And thank you to our sponsor, Mediocre Bit.
Thank you to Mediocre Bit Creators.
Bit Creator.
Because that's all
we all need a
been
mediocre
doing
bit
for the last several months. Yeah. So until next time, we will see you guys later. Go Power Rangers.